Hello and welcome to our 8th live Q&A webinar.
Hello everyone.
I hope you're doing good. We've had a very nice weekend.
Definitely.
And this is one of the things that, one amongst the things that we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
Because we went to Aarhus in Denmark last weekend to visit a place called Lydhaven, or sound, what's it called?
It's a harbor for sound.
Yeah.
Sound harbor.
Yeah, that's right.
I think. My Danish is really bad.
Bordering to non-existent for me.
Something like that.
So, the point is, there's one guy there, let's rather call him a gentleman.
That's more like it.
And that's Jacob Erland.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the person behind Giraffe Audio.
Yes.
It's a one-man band or one-man setup. And he's making some pretty unique and very high-quality analog audio devices, which is right up our alley. And being here in Denmark, we were just eager and could not wait to pay him a visit.
Yeah. So to put this into like a bit of a frame for those of you who haven't been seeing many of these webinars, me and Ziga are currently located in Denmark, in Struer. It's a small city town, at the central west of the coast of Denmark.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think it qualifies as central.
Yeah.
You could go up more north. So anyway, and quite a few sound companies are here, and also an accelerator for startups that deal with sound, such as us. And we've been connecting a bit with everybody local here in Denmark that have to do something with sound and sound technology. One of those is Mr. Jacob Erland, the founder of Giraffe Audio. If you don't know Giraffe Audio, they make mastering grade hand-wired tube powered usually, so mostly tube powered gear. It has a very unique appearance. They're all black with like milled instead of printed markings on the front panels. Very cool looking, very special, and we've known Jacob now for a few years, but we've never managed to pay him a visit to his workshop. So we did that just recently, this weekend, and his workshop is one of the things that you can find in Aarhus in a place called the Lydhaven, as we talked about. So we paid a visit to Lydhaven, which has a mastering studio, a few recording spaces, some live spaces for concerts, and also Jacob's workshap.
And a few rehearsal spaces.
And a few rehearsal spaces as well, and a DJ space, if I recall correctly, right? So quite a few. It's a very nice place. If you do get invited at some point to those facilities, you should pay them a visit. There's a lot of gear to be seen, and a lot of cool people too.
And we'll come to that because. At least I can say for myself that I probably qualify as a gear slut.
We all do.
The, let's say, common disease amongst audio engineers. I couldn't help myself but take a few photos of the candy they have there. At some point we can show them. For those of you who also like to just see cool gear being used in studios. But it looks like we have the first question here.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the format of these webinars is we talk about what's happened during the last week, because we have these webinars every week. If you can, join as much as you can. They're all fun. But the idea is for you guys who are using Mixanalog, or maybe you're considering to use Mixanalog, voice your questions. and we'll answer them because everybody benefits from answers to those questions that you guys have. So don't hold anything back. Ask whatever you like about mixed analog or about audio in general. We'll try to come up with our own answers. Yeah. So with that said, we do have our first question, which is from Charaka. Yeah. Okay. So the question is about cables. Do they matter for sound a lot? And what kind of cables is mixed analog using? And that's, I think, is a good question for you, Ziga. I think you've had an experience with cables a few months back. Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've been quite, let's say, floored by the effect of power cables, which was kind of a voodoo magic snake oil territory for me for quite a long time, because as being an electric engineer, I generally have a hard time accepting stuff like your power, the Euro cable or your ordinary power cable that you connect from your outlet to your device could actually change the sound of it. And I was like, come on, that's you have to be kidding me,
right?
Yeah. And then I had the chance to actually do a test at a local mastering engineer's suite.
I think we can tell them who it is.
It's his name is Gregor Zemlic. He is running the Irresistible Mastering Studio in Ljubljana, Slovenia. So yeah, he got some, let's say, not even the most special esoteric cables, but just a very good one. I had a chance to listen to the same song, which was intentionally very sonically complex and very, let's say, difficult to reproduce for the very high frequency transients and all that. And he exchanged the power cables of the speakers as I was listening to the song. And I could not believe that actually the power cables made a difference. It was not as subtle as you would expect. It was actually, let's say, I would be happy to bet my finger or something on the fact that I would be able to tell the difference even behind the curtain or a blind test or whatever. So yeah, power cables do make a difference, but as they usually cost around a couple of €100 per piece for those that are really of high quality, mixed analog is at the moment unfortunately not running special power cables, because that would cost us probably more than one or maybe even two new machines to put online, which we consider a much bigger value to you, our customers, than exchanging the power cable to get the last 3 to 5% of the performance. But I think that the question was
more for signal cables.
Yeah, more related to signal cables. And for those, we are using, I think...
is it Klotz?
Might be.
I think we have a large pool of Klotz cable. We make the cables ourselves. So they're all handmade in our lab, and we test them all with the analyzers from NTI. I think that's a Swiss company. These are lab certified testers. So mechanically and electrically, they're as perfect as they can be. But sound-wise, they're,
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's the same as with the power cables. We use, let's say, industry standard microphone cables, but nothing esoteric. So we don't go as far as to wire everything with Vovox cables or something like that. Those can be pretty expensive. And again, at least for now, we think that money is much better spent elsewhere to bring you more value than just, as said before, chasing those last 3 to 5% of sound.
Yeah. The difference is bigger in other things anyway. So that's kind of the last mile thing, and we might do that at some point. But we did get another question. So I think this kind of answers it. Mixed Analog uses industry standard, pretty good quality cables. We don't use some weird off-the-shelf, I don't know, mass-produced cables. We make them ourselves. And but they're nothing esoteric. There's nothing like monomolecular, oxygen-free something cables, but
made by made by virgins on a full moon, not on the midsummer eve.
Nothing like that.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Maybe someday.
There is another question though, and it is: did we add the MS feature on Elysia or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet is the answer. We did, however, I think, put the electronics to do so in an enclosure, and so it's probably just a few weeks away from actually going and making that happen.
Yeah. Well, to put this in a bit more perspective, me and Bojan are here in Denmark for 2 or 3 weeks. More. And then we're heading back to Ljubljana. So probably a lot of stuff that we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks is bound to happen in the next month or two, because we're heading back, and we are expecting to get some stuff done, including the MS and parallel blend circuitry around certain components.
So back home, of course, there are guys who can do many things, and they're a great bunch of people. But to get these large changes, because it's not only MS on the Elysia, the same circuitry or a bank of circuits is used actually for the Fairchild, for the VCA, and so on. So we have an idea to upgrade them all at once, or at least install the circuits once, and then change them one by one to use the new circuits. But it's a big undertaking. The hardware is done, the hardware is tested, the hardware is racked. So now we need to be there to do the last, but very important stretch of actually installing it. And for that, since Ziga is the designer, he should be there in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah, and to test everything before it goes live, because we have to make sure that it's sonically up there with
everything else
with the rest of the gear. So we're not degrading the sound in any way with MS encoding and decoding and stuff like that. And there's another undertaking that has to be made before this can come into effect, and this is the GUI, or the graphical user interface, has to be modified or updated, so you could actually control whether or not you're using the
MS mode or the parallel
blend. And since we don't want to add, let's say, some random knobs to the equipment that actually does not include the functionality as such, for instance, the Elysia or the Fairchild or the VCA.
Yeah, and to be maybe even more precise, where the designer hasn't put that feature in anyway, but not only put in, but also design it a certain way. So to be more precise, for example, Elysia does everything without chips. They do everything with transistors. The Fairchild never had a parallel circuit inside any implementation, as far as I know. So when we add something like this, that then it should be separate from the UI. I think the only thing that we kind of put front and center and was never like as front and center, though it was in the unit, is the ratio on the Fairchild. Where you could adjust it with a screwdriver, but we put it on the front panel because we just think it's so useful. But things that we added after the fact, like the MS and parallel circuits, those have to go outside the front panel, just so that you guys don't get confused, or that with that being a part of the unit, and also so that the designers have this feeling that their design is whole. It's just one package, and then everything that's been added is separate.
Okay, and we have another question, and it's about our converters.
Yeah.
And yes, we are still using the burls
Yep.
I think we have like zero intention of getting rid of them.
No. We won't be
So,
getting rid of them. We might
yeah.
augment them with other types, but
Mm,
we're still going to keep them around.
yeah.
If anything, we'll be expanding them.
So if there's no other questions,
Right now there isn't any, but let's hope we get some.
yeah. Should we continue with the
Yes.
the Aarhus excursion?
Yes.
So yeah, let's dig in the photos and
Yeah, exactly.
let's get to the
let's
cool
show
stuff.
them what happened.
So, they have, I think, at least 3 control rooms. I think it's 3 control rooms
At
and
least,
1 mastering room.
Oh yeah. If you count the mastering room as separate, then definitely, yeah. True.
So that was the first one.
And as you can see, it's it's so nice. It looks lived in a way. So cool. You know that there's work being done here. It's not there just for show.
Yeah, and what's let's say most interesting to me is the first time I stepped into it, I was like, okay, someone is collecting just a lot of old stuff and not all this esoterics, and I don't see a big fancy console in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And let's say a little bit underwhelming at first.
Really. Okay.
But then you start looking at one box and the other box and the third box, and you see all kinds of different cool candy lying around everywhere. And then you actually figure out that it's a pretty well-equipped studio with some pretty nice processing boxes.
So there's a spring reverb, the size of a
I don't know if
bicycle.
If my mouse is visible on the
Your
stream, I
mouse
think
is
it's
unfortunately not visible,
Yeah.
but it's above my head.
Yeah.
It's the brown-looking box, and that actually goes all the way to the floor. So it's actually quite huge. I thought it was gonna be yay big, but no, it's a much larger thing.
I actually thought those AKG spring growers were roughly the size of a cajon drum.
Yeah.
You know, the one you sit on, and then this little wardrobe is sitting there in the corner, and that's the spring reverb. So yeah, I was quite surprised to see that.
And we hope to get one of those online at some point. It just seems too sexy not to have one.
Yeah.
So, and reverbs have been sadly lacking on mixed analog now for some time. So I'm hopeful that we can expand the palette with a good reverb. And it was like a parallel circuit. That would be amazing.
Yeah, sure. So next, this is the backside of this first control room.
So proof that we were actually there, not using some stock photos.
Okay. And continuing on, this is what got my attention, to be honest.
That's a lot of DBX.
Yeah. And the fun fact, or the funny thing is, it's not the most praised or the most usual or most emulated 160 VU, but it's 165, which I guess it's practically the same box with a little different layout, maybe a different chip or something like that. But I think that basically the most of the circuit is the same. I'd say. I'm not sure, but I might want to check out myself if those are available, Reverb or eBay or something like that, because probably they don't cost as much as the original.
So you've actually
160.
made a photo so that you can buy them up later from eBay.
Yeah.
What else, right?
Yeah.
Spoken like a true Gearslet.
Yeah. Told you before.
Guilty, yeah.
So.
This is another room, right?
Yeah.
You have the ATC-like speakers.
Yeah, and this guy, who we at some point want to see at Mix Unlock, probably.
Yeah, the nice blue boxes with lots of tubes. Also coming from Denmark. And we hope to talk with them about the partnership. So like Better Maker and Elysia and something that we will announce today. Giraffe, you guessed it. we hope to get TubeTech on our platform as well.
Yeah. And then this next one, oh shit, there we go. This is also a, let's say, not as popular or not as usually talked about piece of gear.
Right.
That's the Studer consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And those are actually, well, if you don't know them, they are Swiss-made. In most of the cases, they were used in broadcast, but actually they are very, very well designed consoles.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people use them for recording. The preamp is especially interesting because it's their own patented design. And from my experience, it's one of the more natural sounding preamps that I've tried to date. Like when nothing else is working, when every other different preamp had some sort of weird thing going on in the mids or something like that, the Studer one was usually the one that you plug it in and say, okay, now that's the sound that I'm hearing in the room. Nothing is wrong with it. It's not taking away nothing. It's not resonating in some strange frequencies. It's just flat. And I really like it for that.
Cool.
So yeah, little history and little...
well, I know that we've recorded something on it at some point in our old offices, and that definitely sounded great. Of course, there were also some good, very nice mics put into it, but the console definitely didn't hurt. So it was a good experience to work on that one. And there's some of them can be folded, so in a suitcase, so you can just bring them to a venue or something.
Yep. So for location recording, a 900 series suitcase Studer mixer is one of the best things you can get.
Sounds
at
legit.
least for my taste.
Cool.
And there's their live room.
That was nice.
Yeah.
That was nice. Surrounded by instruments from every corner, everything from amps, pianos, so much choice. There's guitars everywhere, not in this picture, but trust me, they're everywhere. This is just a great sounding room, and actually they wanted to demolish a part of this room to make it a bit bigger, but then they found out when they were preparing for it, someone had a snare drum in the exact same room, and just fooled around on it, but the sound was so amazing they decided to just don't
touch
don't touch anything. This is the sound we want. So so they kept it exactly as it was back then, and I can definitely assure you that the sound was very very cool.
Yeah,
so I'd love to record here.
It surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
For the room of this size, it really did surprise me on how good it sounded.
Yeah.
And there's one picture of us being very serious and having a debate with Jacob.
So it's us two jokers and a certain gentleman, Jacob Erland from Giraffe, and this is actually his workshop where all of the Giraffe units are made. There are quite a few interesting, let's say, Easter eggs. If you look at this picture for a hard enough time and you're a fan of Giraffe's work, then you'll find stuff here it's very cool, like parts for units that he does, units that he doesn't do anymore, lots of spare parts, many esoteric things, like how many VF14s does he have, which are tubes for the U47? I think he has a box. There's a box of them. It's not just one or two, priceless tubes.
Yeah, the thing.
There's a box.
The things he's pulling out of different corners. I just remembered I have this and that, and he brought a SSL 4K channel strip from somewhere, and those VF14 original tubes for the U47 mics from another corner somewhere up there. It's really a paradise for geeks.
Oh yeah, if you're an audio geek, if you've done any units yourself, but also I think we should tell you, if you want to do your own analog units yourself if you're feeling up to it, like you've got some electronic skills, then Jakob actually runs, or founded at least, a forum. I think it's called. It used to be
DIY now.
it's Group DIY now. It used to be called Prodigy Pro, and originally it was on recording.org, but now it's at groupdiy.com, and he's a swell guy, and that's actually where kind of I think for both of us the plans and people connected to making gear is where we kind of got our start, I think. At least for me, this is where I found everything from parts to knowledge, like specs, schematics, everything. Some of the people there are crazy enough to open up vintage transformers and take like really detailed photos and count every wire turn, and then you can replicate those. So taking one for the team, I guess. But that just tells you how an awesome community that is. And he's the founder of that community. So while I did meet him at trade shows a few years back already, and we meet every year at trade shows, we've actually known each other online for more than a decade, much more.
Okay, and for the grand finale,
Yeah.
or something like that.
So
I don't know if any one of you knows the Gyref units by heart.
I certainly don't. He has 26 now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But still, this exact unit that this chap with the funny sweater is holding in the middle of the picture
Who is that, I wonder?
is coming to Mix Analog.
Yes, indeed. It's the first Gyref unit coming to Mix Analog, and it's very unique, not only for Gyref himself, but also for the whole worldwide pro audio world. This is something that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's super unique. So
Should we talk about it more? Or-
yes,
Okay.
well, let's take a vote. Yes.
Okay, so this is a passive-aggressive compressor.
Yes, that's what it says on the tin. Yeah.
And actually the name carries much more info about it's not just a funny name, but actually it is a passive compressor, which is something that took a little bit of explaining, but once we were filled in on details on how it's done, it's just simply brilliant.
The question.
Yeah. Soon.
Okay, but we can actually give you a timeline.
Yeah.
So the G24 is now in our hands, and we actually got two. One that that's all finished, and we can have it to shoot out against anything else, and also another one that we will put into our own box for recalling and so on. The project starts in a few weeks when we get back. So when we get back to Ljubljana office, we'll be handing over the G24 to the guys there to do the automation part. That usually takes about 4 weeks extra. So that's I think we're at plus 6 weeks from now. And then GUIs testing and everything else, so software development, and that usually takes another 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, I'd say mid-August.
Something like that. Hopefully.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's when you will be able to try out Giraffe Audio passive-aggressive compressor. And just to be clear, passive means there's no active circuitry in the audio path, so no amplifiers at all.
Well, it's optional.
Well,
actually.
you can make it active. Like, you can make it aggressive. But by default, there is no active circuitry in the signal path at all.
Yeah.
But there is compression. So figure that out. But you can help them.
Okay. So the way this passive compression is done is brilliant.
Yes.
Inputting the signal from the XLR, so a balanced signal or a symmetric signal, gives you a, let's say, positive and negative phase version of the same signal. So it's copy that's flipped for one of the wires in the XLR cable. And this goes into a input transformer, stays like that throughout the input transformer. And then you have a resistor that's a photosensitive resistor between the positive and the negative phase of the signal. And that photosensitive resistor is controlled by the sidechain. So it's actually an optocompressor, but the
attenuation comes from canceling out of the positive and the negative phase inside the transformer, but the amount is controlled by the amount of light that the sidechain circuitry generates. So, wow, it's a very interesting way to make compression, and it's definitely passive. So it's like you move the fader.
Yeah,
it's like that.
And once it was explained, the idea behind it is so simple. Like just put a resistor between the positive and the negative phase, but no one has done it to date.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just for that fact alone, it's a very interesting box. But another cool feature is the fact that the upper and the lower row of the controls are actually not the left and the right channel, as you would expect, but it's two completely separate sidechains that you can feed from the input, so before hitting the gain reduction resistor or after hitting it, so after the gain reduction has supposedly been done. So it's a combination of, well, a combination. You can either choose to be fed back or fed forward to the sidechain.
I think, you've already seen that at some compressors. They have a feedback or a feed-forward switch. This one is like that, but you have two sidechains, and either of them can be fed back or fed forward.
Or a combination or both.
Any combination of that. So
That's the funniest.
Even both can be fed forward or both can be fed back. It's nice.
Yeah. So it's actually two different compressors doing their stuff at the same time, and they can either act virtually in parallel or in serial configuration. If you feed the first one from the input and the second one from the output, the resulting gain reduction is going to be the same as wiring them in series.
Yes, but also the actual amount of control each of them has over that resistor is something that you can modify.
Yeah, you can blend the...
Exactly. So you can say, I want 80% of the sound coming from, or at least 80% of the influence coming from the feedback circuit in the first row, and then 20% from the feed-forward circuit on the bottom end. But I think you do it exactly the opposite, but, creativity. You can try anything you want.
It's so easy to get lost in all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of options.
I promise I'm going to be doing a very extensive, slow-moving, and simple as possible tutorial for that compressor, because it's really capable of multitude of different and very nice sounding compression. And we really want you to get the best out of it, because it's a really cool box, and it would be a shame to not put it to good use just because the controls are a little bit complicated.
Yeah, so you might need a few more minutes to get a hang of that one, but hopefully our tutorial will help you. Once the G24 passive-aggressive hits mix analog, and that should be mid-August or something like that.
So that's the end of the slideshow, the pictures from August. Do we have anything?
Yes, I think so. So last week we modified the. Let me just go open the door.
Okay. So yeah, while Bojan is taking care of a lost soul here, last week we did some modifications to our software backbone because it was still a little bit unstable at moments, and we wanted to make it better.
Yes.
But what we actually achieved is make it a bit worse, which was not what we intended. But,
and we apologize.
Yeah.
So what happened, what the motivation was for the change was because there were some things inside Mix Analog that have been there for a very, very long time. And they were fine when we had a few users, but now that we have several thousands of you registered, thank you, those things just don't work so well under pressure. So we replaced that with something a lot more robust, but unfortunately, in the process, as always, when you change things for something new, we introduced a few new bugs, and we fixed a few over the week. But there's one more that we're aware of that can generate silent downloads, or maybe you won't hear any sound at all when you press play. If that happens, let us know in the chat. We'll refund you your mat, and we are also working on a fix. So this should go away in a few days. So I'm hopeful. Somewhere until the end of this week, we might have it all under control. And but when it works, it works better than it did. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and we have another question.
We have a question about the clipping of the converter when using the limiter. So I think either of our limiters that we have, of the Better Maker and the Precision series, can exceed the AD, what's it called, headroom, right?
Yeah, the reference level of the
converter.
Yeah.
So they can exceed that, and you can clip them. So you can clip the converter by boosting the output gain of the limiter above what the AD converter can handle. Now the burls were made for this. You can clip them, and they won't sound too bad when you do that, but of course there's a limit to everything, pun intended, and and so you might hit in too hard, and then that will be a weird sort of distortion that you won't like. But there's option to do that. You can do that. You will see that indicated on the lower part of the I/O unit. When it hits the red, you're clipping the AD section. And not to do that, back off the gain of the output gain on the limiter that you're using. If you want that, because it's not happening, but you want to hit the red, then just boost that gain. Simple as that. And you use your ears to judge when enough's enough. And that will actually generate 0 dBFS. And some people have been telling us they don't want to have a file with 0 dBFS. So if you want to clip the converter, but you want something like minus 0.3 dBFS file, then what you do is you can change the gain on the lower knob in the I/O unit, so the bottom knob, and that knob actually influences the digital level that goes into the file after the AD conversion. So with that knob, you can change the 0 dBFS down to 0 point something, and you will have your cake, and you can eat it too. So you can have clipping, but you can also have a minus 0.3 file if you like that.
Yeah, I think the use case for that would probably be the way that you get some of that saturation and peak reduction by clipping the burl converter and then lowering the output level, so you get your digital file at minus something, and then what you probably want to do is take a oversampling software limiter. So this is, I don't know, well, it's anything that has a true peak knob somewhere. I know that stuff like Ozone and FabFilter and I think Slate too, and DMG and all that stuff that's actually intended to be used as a mastering limiter, it somewhere has a knob that says true peak, and that's something you want to do when you're going to deliver to stuff that's going to play on analog devices.
Okay.
Either that or stuff that's going to be encoded into lossy codecs. Because at those two stages, so encoding into different codec or playing back on analog audio devices, the true peak limiting can save you from nasty clicks.
Yep.
When that happens, because the encoding into lossy codecs will change the waveform just a little bit. So it's going to resample it in one way or another and filter it in one way or another, and that can cause an overshoot in reproduced waveform.
Yeah, and that will clip the circuits after the converter.
Yeah.
Or the insides of the converter. Yeah.
So
don't do that.
don't do that. Use true peak limiters, and that's so the point of lowering the volume after the AD clipping is so you can easily use a true peak limiter in the box after the process.
Yeah, and we hope to in the future to give you an option to mix and match our analog processing, like the compression and the EQ, and also the brick wall limiting that's analog, with digital after the fact processing, so dithering and true peak limiting and things like that. So the mix analog could be a one-stop shop for you if you're doing some sort of mastering, that you don't have to do some of the pre-processing in your DAW and then mix analog and then come back and do some post-processing in the DAW. It would be so cool if you could do all of that just with mix analog. So that's definitely on the menu, and we're looking at that, and hopefully we'll make that as soon as possible.
So
along with metering and stuff like that would really help you make a good mastering experience.
So at some point, mix analog is going to be moving into digital realms.
Also, yes, also. So it will be very clearly labeled what is analog and what is digital. We don't want to deceive you in any way, but there will be an option to mix and match. So that's what we have in mind. Most like really professional studios these days are hybrid. So the results of a lot of polish, but also a lot of sound, they usually come from both worlds. So combining the best tools from both worlds. And that's what we want to give you, because simply said, some of the things in the digital world are just really, really easy to do well. And some of them are easy to do well in analog. So imagine if we did actually then use not just the easy part, but also really invest a lot of hours and a lot of passion and effort into making them really, really good, then we have we can really give you the highest possible quality that you can get from all of these tools. So because that's what we're all about. We really want to make it possible for you to get the best quality master that's possible to get.
Word.
Yeah. I can get really, really passionate about this. It's been our baby now for several years, and it's been nice to see Mix Analog grow, and the community that's forming around it is also super interesting. So we just want to give you guys the best experience that's possible. And there's one more thing on the agenda.
I forgot everything. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, it's been a random day for us. Sorry, we're not as focused, I think, as we could be, Ben. So it's Super Booth, actually.
Ah, really?
Yeah, we're going to Berlin on tomorrow, and we'll be on Super Booth for most of Friday. So if you guys are going to Super Booth, hit us up. It would be great to have a beer or coffee or something. And
Wüsten Sauerkraut.
He's already influenced. And we'll make probably a few videos and pictures from there and talk about it in the next webinar. So there's another question, and this will be the last one I think we take for today. Can I get rid of high-end harshness by using analog gear? Well, from my experience, certainly. things that we have in our arsenal that are really warm and nice and colorful.
Well, I would just say that your sound is not going to get magically just better and right by simply passing through analog gear. You
That's true.
still have to do something with the analog gear.
Yeah.
But the things you can do with analog gear usually sound better with less effort than it would take with certain digital tools. So for example, getting rid of high-end harshness might be as well done with meticulous dynamic EQ or a plugin like Sooth.
Exactly. I was going to mention Sooth, yeah.
And you could easily achieve that, or easily, with some work and a good ear, you could probably achieve it in the box also. But again, going through Pultex and just using the high-pass filter really lightly and sculpting the high end with the boost. Did I say boost before?
You said high pass, and I was chuckling inside because it's a low pass.
Yeah, it's a low pass, so high cut filter.
Yeah.
Use it very gently, and then try to sculpt or make up for the little loss on the very high end with some boost on 6K, 8K range, or vice versa. I don't know what the source is. But yeah, what you can do with the Pultec on the high end can make such a huge difference that it makes up for 20 minutes of tweaking some random EQ.
I also found out that people are kind of scared to use the high attenuation stuff. They don't, especially on mixes and buses, but you don't need to really. It's a thing you can definitely take advantage of. It has its place. Nobody hears up to 20K anyway. So taking a bit of 20K out and then boosting something like 8 or such around with a white Q that can actually sound brighter but not harsher. So it's very interesting what you can do with the Pultec. I also single out the Precision EQ, and the Elysia has a extremely nice high.
Yeah, how could I forget that?
But that's more like, and it has the warm mode, which if you engage it, then that might also do something special for you. And it's still free and probably will stay for a few more weeks. I think we can still get a few more people to use it for free and get to know what it sounds like before we start charging for it. So it'll be around, we believe, for at least 2 more weeks. We'll still let it be available. And there's more actually. We also forgot some more news. Remember when we talked about the tubes and how we want to make sure that the tubes are working well in our products? And then I think we showed you for last time the measurements of the tubes that are in the Pultex right now, which are, to be honest, dying. So we did get a batch of really, really nice tubes. We've got some Mullerts and some Telefunkens and so on. So really nice vintage stuff. And we're putting them through their paces. And we'll see which ones make the cut. Hopefully that will be done today. And we can choose which ones go into the Pultex and replace them in the Pultex. The next target would be the Fairchild.
Yeah, that's going to be quite a lot of work, I guess. But yeah, at least so the thing is the old tubes in the Pultex are causing the stereo
Image
balance
shift,
mismatch in Rec 1. So we want to get rid of that as soon as possible. And if everything goes to plan, it's going to happen today.
Finally. And without loss, and this is really important for us, without loss of the really nice color that we have made the Pultex to be. If you compare our Pultex to the warm audio ones, for example, you might think, analog Pultec. No, it's not the same. It's certainly not the same. You only need to boost a bit of 10K to find out really fast how grainy you can make an analog EQ if you do it the way they did it. We really don't like it. We chose our components really carefully, and the sound speaks for itself. So when we mess with that, like changing the tubes because they're old, we can't get exactly the same ones anymore. So we're going to put some other ones in, but we really want to make sure that we still nail that sound that we have right now, the euphonic, great sounding amps in the Pultec. They deserve really cool tubes. So that's what we're going to do, and it takes a few more days to do that properly, but I think today is the day when we can finally close that chapter and say we found the tubes that we wanted to put in. The sound is great, so and of course the stereo matching needs to be better than it is right now.
Yeah.
The Rec 1 is our flagship product. There's a lot of tools in it, and it has a lot of value, but if people are going to use it for mastering, then the stereo matching needs to be there. So that's why we're taking a bit of extra effort to make sure that when new users come in and want to have something nice, to get to know mix analog, so that we introduce to them properly. Of course, we want to take care of that they get what they expect. And it's not only the sound, it's also the consistency.
Yep, and with that said, I think that now we've really exhausted the
I
theme
think
for talking.
That's what we had on our minds. We're going to close now, but if you guys have any more questions, just ask them in the chat. Actually, I'll just reference one more question that I just got in a chat whilst we were doing this video. The question was, can we use monophiles on stereo products like the Rec 1? Or do we need to re-export and upload a stereo version? The answer is no. You can use the mono version, of course, and the system will make it, will clone it for left and right channel on its own. So you don't need to do that. You can use the same upload as before.
Yeah, the download is gonna be a stereo file.
Yes.
But then you can just take the left or the right channel and simply use the...
So think of it as a bonus. You get 2 channels for the price of 1.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, thanks again for being with us. Thanks for the questions. And hope to see you either on Super Booth in Berlin or see you next week on the next webinar when we are going to talk about our experience on the Super Booth. Maybe we'll have some wonderful news about new gear that's coming to Mix Analog.
Maybe.
We all hope to get some. And with that, I just say thanks for watching and see you next week.
Bye-bye. See you next week.